6 May 2022. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you watch and listen to my official YouTube channel video. Make sure to like, subscribe my official YouTube video, and subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to go to my website, www.susanbling.com. So I kind of figured this particular outfit, what have you, is kind of a little bit befitting in reference to this particular topic point. I do have to make a joke in regards to that it's not a joke, but it is my Oceanic scuba diving combination of pictures that I had turned into a tattoo. And so those who have seen a few modeling pictures and one particular, maybe two performance sets of pictures where you actually see the combination of different oceanic pictures that I had taken when I went scuba diving, specifically in oceanic waters. So some of these are from the Gulf of Mexico area, but the majority of these pictures have to do from the area of the Atlantic oceanic waters. And those who know anything about the oceanic waters in the Atlantic, they kind of swirl into the Gulf of Mexico area. So this is the sunrise, sunset time frame picture from Cozumel, and then these particular areas are from the Atlantic area of the ocean mainly. So, since I was born and raised in New Jersey and grew up going out to the various areas of the Atlantic area of the ocean, because there's multiple areas of the oceanic water to take in consideration. So if you go to my website, www.susanbling.com, there are the books that I had authored. There's the fiction-based book series, so there's Finding a Silver Lining, Finding the Silver Lining, despite using monikers, because that's what they are. There's The Adventures of Susan Bling, Scuba Diver Extraordinaire, the 3-volume book series, and then there is also the modern day book. Granted, there's also the Medal of Honor art project artwork and paintings that could be considered in that capacity as well, though because the paintings are more prophetic in comparison, I don't know how some people view that. But the Medal of Honor art project artwork book in that reference does go alongside with the aspects of the modern day book. So then there's the fiction book series, though certain things can be metaphorically in certain aspects. So you have the Curious Children book series, the 2 volumes of, and then there's the Failsafe, Kennedy Curfews with Science Fiction Fantasy New World Order, and that particular book series, and then the Paroxysm of the Lotus book series. I think that's at 10 books at this point in time. But those are the fiction-based book series because I haven't ever personally experienced them in that capacity of, most specifically in regards of, well, any of them. I did make attempts in regards of a way to explain things to my son and my daughter in reference to the Curious Children book series. However, that was more of a gender role, I guess is the terminology, in comparison to, but also in the scientific aspect, because anybody who knows about biological portions, that's what's required. So, go to my website, www.susanbling.com. There's also my journal blog, and in my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, I've done a lot of updating and clarifications for some verifications in regards of both sides, as far as not really realizing that there could be people who wouldn't be capable to tell the difference. I kind of figured it was common sense because of the genres, but I didn't really take in consideration certain other factors. So in this particular official YouTube video of mine for my official YouTube channel, kind of would be ironic because I personally wouldn't know certain things. So as a child, there were very few people that I had discussed certain aspects of the oceanic portions with. I mean, there was my Grandpa Gavitt to a degree, there was my Bok Poo and my Bok Gong to a degree, and there was my babysitter, Sunny Sonia, and her husband, Joe Jose, had been a director of security in the World Trade Center and the World Trade Center Plaza. Additionally, Sunny Sonia's friend, Norra, had been someone I had discussed some aspects of with, because I think she was from Puerto Rico in comparison to the Dominican Republic. I'm not exact on those particular aspects. So, for the majority of my childhood, up until the point of getting involved with Tae Kwondo, the only child that I really discussed certain things with that would actually believe me and knew that I was speaking in truth was my big blood brother. And he lived next door to my babysitter, Sunny Sonia and Joe Jose. And so my big blood brother and I, we would talk about certain things, though the irony of him having the name he had, which his name was Damien. And his name was Damien Menendez, to be specific. And so people didn't take him as seriously because of what his name was, whereas I did. And people didn't take me as seriously because I was the original baby Jesus Christ in reference to the Methodist family who had started the original aspects of the live nativity. So the live nativity was actually in someone's property, and the final scene was in a garage, compared to the way Old Tenet Presbyterian Church later had implemented it in the grounds, or on the grounds, I should say. I go a little George Carlin on that. On the grounds in comparison to in the grounds, especially when it comes to Old Tenet Presbyterian Church and that square mile location. So I really need to clarify that one, because that's, I'm about life. So, and it is as it is. So by the time of 1994, 1995 is when I had begun going to the dojo. And Sensei Bob, as far as what we were told his name was, had been who had run the particular dojo. He didn't, from what I remember, he didn't usually have any other people involved with the teaching aspects. He was the only guy, it was his dojo. He had worked with some other people. His training, from what he had explained, was through specific masters that he had learned from, and senseis in those capacities. I had, when initially starting going to Sensei Bob, he was the first adult, before scuba diving, mind you. So obviously, because scuba diving's not until 2009, he was the first adult that wasn't those particular other individuals who I spoke with about, not only in reference to going out to the oceanic areas during camp, or summertime I should be more specific of, but also in very few references regarding what I was dealing with that I could speak with, more so about with my big blood brother, but also my Grandpa Gavitt, and some of the people who would show up to Old Tenet Presbyterian Church in usually the black suits. Usually the guys who I spoke with about some of the stuff that I dealt with, they somehow would actually know. So I guess maybe, I don't know, there's kind of this song I found more recently in the past, I think it was 2019, I found this song called Men in Black, and it's kind of funny. However, usually back in New Jersey, And even in Illinois, when those guys would show up, it was weird because they'd show up within maybe 7 to 14 days, and they'd just come and speak with me. And just be like, Harry, come here. let's talk. Either that, or I'd see them, it got to a point where I'd see them sitting in a certain location. Usually they were sitting in one of the, either the mustard yellow chair or the medium-ish green chair. And they'd usually have their newspaper and their fedora off to the side, and I'd run up and be like, hi, what are you guys doing here? Well, you know, and it depended on the situation, whether they had a folder file that they needed to speak with me about or whatever it was. Other times they'd just see me walking around, and, you know, the way they would approach was usually fairly common how they did that, and so, you know, it was as it was. That's just how they were. And so I don't know whether in reference to after having been moved from New Jersey to Illinois, if that was a situation because of Mike and Anna, because they had issues with me speaking with these guys. It was as it was. I kind of didn't really care. Felt kind of more comfortable with these guys, as odd as that may sound. So they were as they were. So in Illinois, it was funny because a lot of times these guys in these dark black suits, I mean extremely dark black suits with these extremely stark white button-down shirts, and then 9 times out of 10 they just had a black tie, and then whatever their handkerchief was. Though my hair is obviously much different than when I was a child. I also have tattoos, which, you know, when I was a child, there were actually only 2 or 3 guys who knew. So the temporary tattoos that you could get at like Pathmark out on the other side of the, I think there was like a brick wall. You had like the gumball machines and stuff like that. You put the quarters in it, sort of thing. And so there were a few times where, you know, you get the little temporary tattoos, and I only do certain ones in certain locations and everything like that. Well, one of these guys, there was a situation in the backyard, and this is before it became the neighborhood back there where the forest situation occurred. And one of the guys had asked what I was doing with one of the tattoos. And I said, oh, well, you know, I actually got this whole thing. And he was like, yeah, I know you did. I know, which, you know, at that point as a child, if I was in a different situation, I probably would be nervous about that in comparison, but it was as it was. And, you know, I was essentially asked why. Why did I do it in that capacity? Because he was noticing that most other children, when they would get kind of the cluster group, they would just do the whole thing in comparison. I said, well, I put it in certain locations for certain reasons. And he asked a few questions about that from that point in time. I was like, yeah, well, you know, I could do it the way everybody else does, but why? What would be the point to do it that way? And so he kind of, he was one of the, so every now and then he would change out his handkerchief compared to his tie. He rarely ever changed out his tie. And so then in Illinois, those particular guys, they usually showed up when I was working at IHOP. I've gone over some of that in a few details. And then there was a situation regarding 1999 in Indiana, as far as that was concerned. Ironically, I was actually thinking that I was gonna have one of those guys show up, and they didn't, which was confusing to me. It's like, oh, okay, so I go and actually deal with certain other things, and all of a sudden, you guys are just like, wait, what's going on? All right, no, that's fine, I understand, you're busy, that's fine, no, it's okay. You're probably wondering what that was. You're not the only one, that's fine. Okay, so, not like they had a calling card. It wasn't like, you know, they had ever, well, I can't say that there was one. But that was back way back when, and so it was it was. They I don't know how many people have ever had these situations, but it is what it is. I didn't have really many issues with them. They were kind. It wasn't until I think it was 2012 the first time I saw one again, as far as the guy with the Men in Black type of suit, because he was a male and he had the same type of white shirt and the same type of black tie. He had a fedora just as similarly, although the difference was he had some gauze over his face. And so it was different because I hadn't ever seen one of the. I don't want to necessarily say they're my guys, but maybe, I don't know, because it was just one of those. I didn't ever have any issues as far as that was concerned. So those guys were as they were, and I didn't personally feel uncomfortable. I don't. I can make a joke in the year of 2011, which is actually kind of funny because it was after one of the Irving situations in 2011. But anyway, because there was the first apartment in Irving and then there was a second apartment in Irving. And so I had actually gotten a black suit jacket. I had been looking for this for several years online. And so this is why I got angry with Patrick, because it was just reminders until I could actually find what I was looking for, because I was remembering certain details, and so don't assume you know what I'm looking at. And so, but it reminded me of this one particular piece as to when I had been with my grandpa Gavitt, when my biological mother, biological father, biological sister, and my grandma Gavitt went to the store one time when we went up to upstate New York, and Grandpa Gavitt had pulled out his, shadow box version of it. So I had put on, the only thing I could put on was the jacket. It was like a dress because I was a child in elementary school. And so, in comparison, it went down to my ankles at that point in time. It's like, eek! So that was kind of that, and it's funny because even though it's a bra that I have in that particular picture of that jacket type suit sort of situation, it kind of was like the tank top that I was wearing, which was a black and white tank top. And so I was all excited as a child, with my little pigtails, although I can make a joke now. And, it's so bad! So, in this particular reference of, other than those guys, which is different in some capacities because they were in their business suits, obviously, so there was Sensei Bob. And so it was kind of the opposite, because those who know how gis are, especially as far as the black lettering on the back, although I don't really remember, I think mine had it just as almost like a handkerchief, but not. And so Sensei Bob was the first adult that I had actually spoken with, other than these guys, and these guys would only show up after certain situations, and I didn't really discuss the Oceanic portions. It was usually the stuff from the sky aspects. And so with Sensei Bob, one of the first times in classes at the dojo, he had said something. I can't remember what he said, and I had brought up, oh, do you go out to the ocean? And he was like, he stopped the class in the area and he goes, you could say I go out to the ocean every now and then. And I hadn't been in his office yet. And I was like, oh, well, I go swimming out in the ocean each summer. And he was like, oh, wait, swimming? Yeah, swimming. He's like, you don't just go to the shore? Don't you just go to the shore? No, I go swimming. And he's like, swimming in the Atlantic. Yeah, I go swimming in the Atlantic. And he's like, So let me understand this correctly. You don't just go to the shoreline. So when you go where do you, and he just kind of started doing this, I don't know what it was, but he kind of just, what do you mean when you go to the ocean? Well, when I go there, well, what do other people do? He asked, well, haven't you paid attention to what other people do? Yeah, but I don't really care. And he was like, okay, so what do you do? And he pointed out, most people only go ankle deep or knee deep. They don't really get much further. And I was like, oh, I just swim along the jetties. And he's like, you do what? And I'm like, yeah, I swim out the distance of the jetties and back, or I'll swim all the way past the jetties because, and he's like, no, I don't know. I'm like, no, there's like the buoys, so I go out there and I kind of hang out on the big old floaty orange balls and kind of flip around and go out to where the rope is. And he's like, you do what? I was like, why not? And he's like, because, you're supposed to, why would you, what do you mean, why not? Well, why not? Is it illegal to go swimming in the ocean? And he looked at me and he goes, no, it is not illegal to go swimming in the ocean. However, why would you think that you could go swimming out, like, do you swim to the jetties? What do you do? No, I swim, well, sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll just swim in the middle. So what I usually do is I get to the beach and I go, put my stuff down and then I go run. And he's like, you go run. Yes, I go run. I just run into the ocean and then at some point in time I dive into the water and I swim around. And he's like, you dive in the water? Yeah, what do people do when they go to the ocean and get to the water first? And he said, they usually walk up to the water. And then they kind of, whatever. Well, that seems boring. Sensei Bob, what's wrong with you? Why would anybody just go walk up and just be like, do? No, if I want to go swimming, I'm going to go run, and I'm going to go run as far as I can, and then I'll go swimming. Duh. And he's like, okay, so mind you, I have no idea what of anything at this point in time. I'm in 7th grade at this point. And it just is as it is. I'm just gonna go swim. It's just what it is. And so he asks me a bunch of questions. And yeah, no, what? Am I supposed to care what other people think about my swimming? And he was like, no, that's not what I'm asking you. So I am, this was his words, I am concerned that you're willing to go run. Most people just kind of stand at the coastline. Do you know how strong the Atlantic is? Not really. I mean, how do you measure strength? And he kind of just, Susan, that's a very different question to ask. Well, I'm just saying, how do you measure strength? It's just the ocean. He's like, well, it's a little bit, wait, hold on, excuse me, it's just the ocean? Well, yeah, it's just the ocean. Why? What's the big deal, Sensei Bob? It's just the ocean. And his response was, except it's the Atlantic. It's not just the ocean, it's the Atlantic. Okay, yeah? So what? It's just the Atlantic, fine, whatever. I'm just gonna go swim. And his response was, so let me understand this correctly. You run from the area, you put your stuff, and you run into the water. Yeah, well, I run, and then when I feel like it, I dive into the water. There's a difference, just so you know. And his response was, okay. So you just run, you go and dive into the water, and then what? Swim? I mean, that was back then in comparison to more recently where I just kind of, well, it's, the polar bear, whatever version of, and, this is what it is, yeah, this is, it's my background, it is what it is. So Sensei Bob, after that particular week of class, you know, a couple weeks later, he pulls me aside and he's like, Susan, come here for a second. What's up, Sensei Bob? How's everything going? He goes, so, did you always go through Marlboro Recreational Camp? No, there were some other times with my babysitter and her husband and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, so you just did that since what year, out of curiosity? And you know, sometime in the 80s. And he was like, okay, since the 80s, you've been just doing that. Yeah, why? And his response was, well, I know some guys, a few, and these guys have been wondering some questions about apparently you. Oh, what's the big deal? What'd I do? And he's like, no, all you're doing is you're just swimming. Well, for the most part, yeah. You know, I mean, there have been a few times where there have been some situations where I didn't know what was going on. I just went and checked it out, and then, you know, whatever. And he's like, no, I don't know. Well, there was this one time, there was this guy, and he goes, okay. And I said, he had this weird thing in his mouth. It was like a binky. He's like, what? Yeah, it kind of looked like a binky. Apparently, that might be a regulator. It took to 2009 to learn this. And he had this little doohickey bob on the side of his, you know, whatever. And then he had this little thing that he clicked in the water, and it kind of glowed and stuff. And he's like, apparently the term is chemlight. And so, I just kind of was like, well, what are you guys doing? It was a really bad idea to have the little doohickey bob. You know, a flashlight would have been so much better. And Sensei Bob was like, a flashlight? Well, yeah, why would you use chem lights? Like, what are you going to see in the ocean? What's wrong with you, seriously? And Sensei Bob goes, so you think that using a flashlight in the ocean would be better? Well, wouldn't you think you could see further than a little doohickey bob? And his response was, yes, maybe. I don't know, I didn't really think about it. How do you propose to keep it waterproof? Well, you know, if you have a good enough seal. And he laughed. What's so funny? Nothing at all. It's just, you know, so I don't know if he was a seal. He might have been, I don't know. Because it wouldn't be until the following year that I had ever actually been in his office. And so he had a few stuff on the shelves. So he had, you know, the American flag, and he had a few other things, and then he had these shiny, pointy things, and then he also had like the rack of, you know, all these little, would look like coins now, as far as what would be essentially considered his military stuff. Back then, though, I hadn't grown up seeing that. And so, you know, he had like this one where there were little squiggly lines around this circular, I mean, it wasn't big, it was like maybe 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. It had like this little circular shape, and then there was like a little circle inside of the circle shape, and it had little squiggly lines. And so, I know that's probably not really all that helpful, but maybe there's somebody who understands. So there's who I refer to as, okay, fine, his name is Rob O'Neill. I call him Cutie Patootie Navy SEAL. Yeah. And then there's, okay, fine, his name is Johnny Joey Jones. I call him Cutie Patootie Marine. And so if you were to take the two of them, kind of squish them together, especially with the way more recently in the year of 2022, the way their arms and shoulders are as far as their build, and even like from what I've seen in the few areas when they've been standing, if you were to take their hair color and kind of blend it, he had a reddish brown, but like a reddish medium brown hair. You it was almost gingery-ish, the way, you know, Cutie Patootie Seal, his hair is, but with the brunette portion of Cutie Patootie Marine, but short, so it was a buzz cut. Not a high and tight, just a pure buzz cut, and then he had, kind of like how Cutie Patootie Seal has the scruffies on his face, or the beard, or whatever it's called. He had like that, sort of, whatever. And then he had like these black coke rim eyeglasses that were, you know, they were fairly big in that reference as far as around his eyes. Almost, you know, if he were to wear, you know, for those who know what BCGs are in regards of basic training, they were kind of like that, only black color. So yeah, that's kind of the shape of those particular glasses that he had, and yeah, that was like Sensei Bob. And so, you know, this particular official YouTube video of mine, he once he learned about my childhood regarding the oceanic portions, and how, oh, I gotta run out to the ocean and gotta go swim and stuff like that. He had a very difficult time wrapping his thoughts about how I was just like, yes, somebody go swimming in the Atlantic, or apparently because I didn't really care, it's just the ocean, I just wanted to go swimming. He had a very difficult time understanding how, as a child, I'm like, woohoo, yeah, let's go to the beach, woohoo! Because apparently he knew a bit more about the Atlantic area, and I was just like, yeah, that's nice, that's the water, yay, swim time! Woohoo! And his thing when I was in Tae Kwondo was, well, why don't you swim at a pool? And I was like, because it's boring. And his response was, how is it boring? Well, because there's no waves. It's not fun. Like the majority of, I mean, it's fun, it's okay. You know, sure, at a pool I could talk with people and stuff. At camp. Okay. I could do that not at a pool too. And his response was, well, why wouldn't you want to talk with people? And my response was, have you met some? Which he didn't have much to say other than touche, Susan, touche. And it was one of those, just saying, you know, Sensei Bob, I don't know if you've met many people. Sometimes it's okay to just, it's better to go to the ocean. And so he had asked me, well, why don't you, do you ever, like, sit with people on the beach? Sometimes I do. A few times I have, but, you know, most of the times I wasn't really talking with them. And he had asked why. Well, I pulled them out of the water, you know, and so there wasn't much talking, you know, other than breathe or you doing okay now? And but that's not really talking with. It's not really a discussion. It's more along the lines of, well, now that you got that out of you, you're good to go, okay. And then I go. And Sensei Bob was just, you know, Susan, you're quite different. Do you know this? Not really. No, I don't think I'm different. And his response was, you are though. No, I'm not. I'm me. Why would you say I'm different? It took him a while to clarify different from other people, because I had to explain, no, I'm the same who I am. What's wrong with you? I haven't changed at all. I've gotten taller, does that count? And so his thing was, well, you know, when you go to the beach, you know, what do you do at camp when you go to the beach? I drop my stuff where I know everybody's gonna put their stuff, and then I go run. It's so difficult about this, Sensei Bob. I go run, and then when I feel like it, I go dive in the water, and then I go swim. And then I swim back, and then, depending on what time it is, I do it again and again until, it's lunchtime. And then when it's lunchtime, okay, fine, I'll sit with the other people. Fine. I can do that. And then, if they want to talk, otherwise I just eat my food, and then I go back swimming. And Sensei Bob had asked me, what do you mean if they feel like talking? And I said, well, Sensei Bob, I don't know what type of people you're accustomed to being around. However, I haven't had many people that actually just talk with me. You're kind of one of the few who've actually had a discussion with me. Most people, they just kind of, they look at me like I'm different, which I'm not, and I don't know what they see when they see me, but, I'm just who I am. And so, I don't really judge people unless I have to evaluate things, and even then, when I don't really like to do it. Because if I have to judge people, that's because I've been put into a situation where I have to. And it's not something that it's one or two little things. It's usually a large aspect of a lot of situations at once. And I don't really like doing that, because when I have to do that, that translates to I'm not allowed to be soft. I'm not allowed to, and so he had interrupted me, and he was like, what do you mean you're not allowed to be soft? And I said, well, if I go soft, even if there are certain emotional connections, then that's telling a lie. And so I have to acknowledge the emotional connections. And I don't like doing that, not because I don't enjoy whatever emotional connection. It's more along the lines of, because of that emotional connection, I have sympathy. But because of the few times that I've had to actually do this, if I have to get to a certain point, those emotional connections I cannot allow to impact how I review things, because of usually when it comes to me being questioned. Because if I do that, it doesn't give the fuller portions. And so I don't actually like going into those details, because if I have to, then that translates to having to acknowledge, whether it's emotions, feelings, whatever, but it also translates to, because of that emotional connection, having to go into that. And because I can actually care despite what some people think, internally I have these mixed sensations where I don't want to. And so because I don't want to, it usually comes out meaner than I intend. And because of every other combined aspect when these situations have occurred, and by that time, there were 2 or 3 different times when I had to do this. And this is back in my childhood. I'm only in 7th grade by that point. And so this, again, is the year of 2022. So I don't, I don't like acknowledging this stuff, because it's one of those, I don't like bringing it posting I had written called the Military BDSM Collision, and it kind of is in certain references. And so I had explained to Sensei Bob, and this is again back in like 1995, or maybe 1994 into 1995. I know I was a white belt with a black stripe at the time. And so maybe it was like a month and a half, 2 months in. And explaining to Sensei Bob that, I don't like doing this because if I have to, it translates to there's much more than just 1 or 2 situations. It's much more than, a couple of things here and a couple of things there. And usually I can just get away with somebody asking me a few questions. I give the details of what I can, and then that's the end of that. We can go and talk about all sorts of other things. When I have other situations that occur, I don't have the luxury that some people have, where they can mask that sort of stuff. Because they want to be loyal, but they don't know what being loyal actually is. Because they think that certain smaller sects, in comparison to the larger conglomerate of the overall communal aspects, are taken into consideration. So I don't really like going into it. Again, this is back in 7th grade. And so Sensei Bob was just, that's a lot to have on your shoulders. I mean, you're just in 7th grade. You're like 10, 11 years old. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have no idea. Maybe you do. I don't know. But sometimes it's annoying to have to deal with that because when you have to bring that forward, you have to acknowledge that you have whatever as far as these biases like to do that. And I usually just enjoy life is as life is. And there's interconnections here and there, and it is as it is. And so Sensei Bob had asked a few questions regarding the ocean because he was completely baffled. He could not wrap his mind around the fact that I actually enjoyed swimming in the Atlantic. Because he hadn't ever met anybody that enjoyed swimming in the Atlantic, and not just anywhere in the Atlantic, off of the coastline of New Jersey. He hadn't ever met anybody that was like, yes, this is awesome, woohoo! He had never met that. And I didn't understand why, and though I had explained, well, you're not the first. Most people, when I tell them that I'm excited to go to the beach, they don't usually want to go. They want to go to the boardwalk area. They want to go to the sand volleyball area. They want to go to like seaside waterworks where everything's under a monitored sort of situation where each and every ride is only a certain capacity and you have to follow all these whatevers, whereas when you go to the Atlantic, it's the laws of the ocean. And that's it. If you think, just anybody's going to go out to the Atlantic and, it's a big deal going out to the Atlantic. And, so when I go, I'm preparing myself, I'm taking care of stuff, and he's like, well, what could you be taking care of? And, well, there are certain things I've noticed in regards of a few situations. And in these few situations that I've noticed, making sure that stuff's actually taken care of. You know, I'm 4 life above sea level. And so when you have certain capabilities, you go and do what you can if you actually appreciate life. It's very simple. And his response was, well, what if you know about certain situations and in the ocean, you know, that's kind of that's a big area. Yeah, it is. Well, I don't have any idea of what Sensei Bob did before the dojo. I have no clue. And then, you know, I get to a certain point and I find out that there's going to be the international Tae Kwondo competition with the circuit. And I had just been put up for promotion for the initial testing to go from my yellow belt with my black stripe and my tape to green belt, and just in time to literally enter the competition circuit. And Sensei Bob actually tried to discourage me because I didn't have any, there would not be the time frame for me to have any sparring experience as far as in the dojo. And I said, I don't care. It's experience. I'll do the best I can and go from there. So Sensei Bob tried talking me out of it. I was like, no, I want to do it. So then he spoke with Mike and Anna, and Mike's response was, well, if she thinks she can handle the competition circuit, let her go. Go do it. Anna's response was, is it like dancing with Patricia's little recitals? And Sensei Bob was like, no, there's not dancing, no. And so Anna's response was, oh, well, I'm not really interested if there's no dancing. And Sensei Bob was just like, okay. So you two are okay with Susan getting involved with this. And Mike was like, yeah, well, you know, we'll see whether or not she does anything worthwhile. And Anna was like, but she's not going to go dancing. And then Patricia pipes in and she's like, I do dancing. It's like, Sensei Bob, seriously, this is what I deal with at the house. So yeah, okay. And so go through the circuit. You know, I mean, literally from the time of the paperwork being signed, Sensei Bob goes and does whatever as far as getting that taken care of. I go the next week and I complete my form for the testing as far as that was concerned. And I mean, for those who understand, I made my geese snap and echo in the dojo. And Sensei Bob was like, well, you know, since you're going to go to competition, that might actually work out. It wasn't a huge dojo, but it was as it was. If I remember correctly, either the outside was blue and the inside was red, or vice versa, as far as that particular map arrangement. And then you had the additional fold-out mats. And then there was one wall that had the mirrors, and then behind was the see-through glass where the lobby was and all that sort of stuff. And then along the area of the lobby was the hallway that led to Sensei Bob's office, and then the bathroom area or whatever. And so, you know, after my promotion to green belt, within, I think it was, so instantly it was the training for my form, because of what was the requirement. And then essentially, I think it was either one every 3 weeks or one per month as far as that particular competition ring circuit for the advancement to get to the international competition. And the majority of times, Sensei Bob just, I'll take you, that's fine, because, you know, Anna and Mike were concerned about whatever stuff at church and or what was going on as far as Patricia's dance recitals. So they were there more in that capacity, and it was like, okay, you know, that's fine. And it wasn't that I didn't want to be involved with church. I'd already done a lot when it came to church, and I wanted to do that. So it was one of those, okay, and I prepared myself. So I knew that there was going to be a few situations. So, you know, get to the first competition, and okay, it was first and second as far as sparring and form, and then the next whatever levels as far as. And Sensei Bob was just did not realize that you were that much of a little spitfire, because when it came to sparring, he didn't think that I was going to really do anything. He thought that it was going to be a tap out, and then that was the end of it. Well, the first go, and first and second place. And then his response was, okay, so I know that Rob Castle is annoying. This is where this happens. I know Rob Castle is annoying you, and you are not allowed to spar Rob Castle. I watched you just do that as far as the competition's concerned, and I know he's been annoying you. No, you're not allowed. No. You are not allowed to spar Rob Castle. I thought, oh, come on, Sensei Bob. Why wouldn't you want to let me have fun? And he's like, no. And so his response to that was, as long as I am teaching at the dojo, you're not allowed to spar Rob Castle. But Sensei Bob, why not? Because that wouldn't be fair. But you know, it would be fun. I'd have fun. And no, I'm sure you would. Frighteningly so. No. So one day, there was a guy in a black suit who had shown up, and Sensei Bob went and spoke with him, and then for a few weeks, he wasn't at the dojo, and whatever he was doing, well, there was a substitute teacher, and Sensei Bob had said only when he wasn't. That's what he said. That's what he said. So I thought, I'm just saying, he would arrange it, but you know, he said when he was at the dojo, and so he wasn't at the dojo. So I got to spar Rob Castle, and I won. I made him cry, and so that was as it was. There was a female that also lived in Manalapan. She had a crush on Rob Castle, and it was like, yeah, you can have him. I'm not interested. It's like, I'm not going to fight you for him. Believe me, I'm not going to. I'm not interested in that at all. It's okay. I'm good on that. It's cool. And so, aside from the fact I can't date, so, you know, there's that. And so it was as it was. I think she was Korean and Hispanic mixed. I can't remember officially what her name was, but it was as it was. And so when Sensei Bob got back, I was brought into the office. And this is where I get to see all of the stuff on the shelves. And, you know, yeah, all sorts of doohickey bobs and that little pins or whatever they were, I don't know. You know, as a child, give you a break. I was in middle school, and it was before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, so you know. But there were a whole bunch of doohickey bobs and whatchamacallits and shinies. And what I knew is they weren't jewelry pieces, however, they could pass for some, depending on it. And so there were little doohickey bobs and shinies. And that's what I knew. wasn't ever allowed to swear at castle because, now it has expanded from not just at the dojo because he didn't know if he was going to be called in for certain other things for whatever he was doing. So his thing was, you're not allowed to swear at castle and all of that. You are no fun, Sensei Bob. That's not fair. I'm just saying. And Sensei Bob was, I heard about what you did. So what? What's wrong? What I did wrong? And his response was, it's not what you did wrong, it's what you did correctly. So? So that translates to a good job then, huh? And he was like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you are not allowed to. Where's your sense of adventure, Sensei Bob? And his response was, I have plenty of senses for adventure, thank you very much, young lady, if you actually... And then he stopped himself. Yeah, okay, Sensei Bob, sure. Whatever. I mean, what I do wrong when it came to that. And his response yet again was, it's again not what you did wrong. You just did that so correctly that was just, no. And I've seen what you've done as far as the competition is concerned. You, young lady, I am not a young lady. I am a female. And his response was, yeah, great, okay, awesome. Yeah, you are just, so then I just wasn't allowed to spar anymore after the international competition where I earned second and third place. I was only allowed to spar for up until I earned my blue belt. And then that was it. Just before earning my blue belt, I was not allowed to spar anymore. None of the black belts of whatever degree were willing, Sensei Bob actually would try to get people to come in and they're like, we're not sparring her. No, we're not sparring her. No, that's cool, we're not sparring that, no, and so other dojos had found out, and it's like, well, what's the big deal? And he's like, you sometimes hit a bit hard. Well, duh. What? Who spars? That doesn't hit hard. And apparently, it was as it was. So yeah, I was one of those, alright, well fine, so only in defensive aspects. And so, but Sensei Bob, shortly thereafter, it was already known as far as Governor Christine Todd Whitman and that particular project, which he was excited about because he had learned that I had created as I had. And then there was the aspects of being invited to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment, and Anna could not understand why I would ever be invited to Mast. And I made attempts explaining after the equivalent of the ASVAB, and her response was, no, that has nothing to do with martial arts, except it's got a Navy attachment, and they have certain, and so then she got all whatever, and it's like, that's the problem with some of your types. When there are females who can do certain things to make sure there's whatever, you want to keep them in a little bubble, and you can't. And so it was, as I've described in prior lectures before, as well as discussions well before my official YouTube video and channel stuff in conjunction with my website, www.susanelane.com. It was more along the lines of, you know, well, if it can protect and defend the United States of America and that, then there's really nothing wrong. You know, there shouldn't be that big of a problem, especially with the knowledge of my other prior stuff. And so Sensei Bob was pretty angry when he found out that I didn't go to Mass. And so were a few people, such as those Navy and Marines that showed up to the house in New Jersey. Yeah, there were a few of those. Those guys seemed to be quite angry that I wasn't apparently in those times. I guess I did get into Mass. Maybe, I don't know, I didn't actually read the letter. So that would be I don't know what the legal term is for that in regards of Mike and Anna, most specifically in that hypothetical, because I don't know what Sensei Bob did. As far as his background, yeah. So that is what it is as far as that's concerned. He never really discussed that stuff either. And so I guess maybe there's an irony in certain references as to people I've known over the years, possibly, where, you know, I mean, I wouldn't know. I know that I dealt with a lot of different situations, to put it mildly. And the irony really would be in reference to, well, not only regarding the civilian recreational scuba diver sector, but also Carrollton, Texas situations, and then Mike and Patricia situations, and then ex-in-law situations, and if in that reference of the guys that I was accustomed to speaking with way back when, before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, I mean, there's even the guy in reference to my basic training regarding the bus ride from what we were told was Oklahoma City Airport to what we were told was Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And, you know, that guy, I didn't speak with him, but he had a black suit and a white, like a stark white, thick, stark white, button-down shirt with a tie and a red handkerchief, and then his fedora had a red band with a feather that had some purple in it. And, you know, if I remember correctly, his was a pinstripe, which I had only met a couple of those guys when it came to the black suits. Usually they were a solid color. Only every now and then did I meet a guy who had the pinstripe black suit. And it was explained to me that, you know, certain levels, certain guys, certain would have use. And so, it was as it was, and situations went as they went. But yeah, I kind of figured, you know, especially with having been out to New Jersey for the first time in an area that I'd actually recognized in February of 2022, and working through a lot. I mean, it's not just one or two situations, it's a lot. And so, you know, I don't know what the name of the dojo was. I don't remember where it was. I don't know if it was in Marlboro. I don't know if it was Manalapan. I don't know if it was Freehold. And I don't know if I'd even recognize. I did drive around some areas, but I was a passenger, and it was usually at night, so it was around twilight. And usually I was driving around during the daytime or the nighttime in comparison, and all of the additional buildings in the area, it's kind of, I made attempts, so, and I have no idea where, because realistically, so it'd be interesting if like Sensei Bob had, kept tabs, I guess, in some ways. Like, oh, this little one is gonna go and be his whatever, because again, I have no idea what his. It'd be funny if he was. I don't know. I don't know what that would translate to as far as some of those doohickey mabubs. So he was absolutely baffled as to how I could ever have enjoyment running and swimming out in the ocean from New Jersey. That was one thing. Like every other class, it was one of those, are you sure that you really enjoy that? Really? Do you know that you're a girl? And I was like, I am a female, what does that have to do with anything? And so, I do remember when I had my yellow belt with my black stripe, before I earned one of, I think it was my first or second tape. For those who understand that. So I'm doing punches. And his issue was you gotta hit in the chest. You gotta aim, this area, and he was upset because of my form, essentially. And I was like, why are you angry? And he was like, because I can throw a punch and go straight up in the air, but that doesn't do anything. Why are you punching so high? And I was like, because I'm short. Pretty much it, when you're short, you don't really want to do that, I don't think, Sensei Bob, because if you punch, like, when you're short, it kind of seems dumb. And he was like, I could spend so much energy and rah, or whatever, rah, and it's like, yeah, except I'm short. At that point, I wasn't even 5 feet tall, okay? I didn't hit 5 feet tall until I was a sophomore or a junior. So, for me, it's like, well, it makes sense, because, I'm short. I think I was like 4'8", maybe 4'6" at the time. Yeah, it's kind of dumb for me to be going like, I'm only 5, I'm just saying. And so Sensei Bob and we actually argued over that, because his was, your form is, well, Sensei Bob, I'm short, you're taller than me. I think he was like something like 6 foot something. Yeah, so sure, you could do that. I'm 5, now I'm 5'4", Compared to you, I'm short. I'm little. Duh. What do you think I'm supposed to do? I'm vertically challenged. Thank you very much. Compared to everybody else, because like the majority of people in the class. So this is how this went. If you were to line everybody up, it'd be like, here's me. As far as height is concerned, you know what? This is a really good example. So there's like everybody else in the class, and then here's me. As far as height is concerned. Yep. I mean, sure, I could go like this, but that doesn't help. So, it was as it was. And then there was a guy in the class at the dojo. He was an interesting one. I think his name was Michael. And he was playing the flute at the time. And I was like, oh, I got into the piccolo class and stuff. And he was like, the piccolo isn't the same as the flute. Yeah, well, I play the flute too. You can't play the piccolo without learning the flute. be backwards to do it any other way. And his response was, well, I'm going to do martial arts and then do the flute playing of something and whatever. And I'm like, why would you do martial arts and play the flute? That seems kind of dumb. What would make you think that would be normal? And he's like, because, it's the controlling of something. It's like, or? I don't know. I mean, sure, fine. That's cool. What happens if you trip and fall? And his response was, why would I do that? Well, make sure you don't. Might hurt. And his response, well, why would it hurt? Well, did you know a flute is made out of metal? I don't know if you know this or not. You, on the other hand, are not made out of metal. Again, I don't know if you know this or not. And his response was, I know I'm not made out of metal. Okay, well, just gonna leave it at that. Sure. Where did you get the idea to do martial arts while playing the flute? And he's like, Susan, you're just totally not cool. Alright, that's fine. I'm also not going to do martial arts, trip, and fall while holding a flute. That seems dangerous. And I get questioned about going and swimming in the ocean. I don't know. I think some of you really need to consider whether or not I'm as unsafe as you might actually be doing a little bit of self-projection right there, because sure, I'll go swim in the Atlantic, that's fine. You know what I don't have to worry about? Tripping and falling while holding a flute. Seems pretty simple. I was called mean for that. Yeah, that truth. I guess so. I don't know. It was as it was. But yeah, I don't know what happened as far as Sensei Bob is concerned. But I do remember Sensei Bob. Yeah. I had made a joke. He didn't really like my joke. I said I didn't know which was whiter, his gi or his skin. He kind of was upset by that, and I was like, but Sensei Bob, it's the truth. Because in my defense, I had just spent a weekend up in New York City, okay? So I spent the whole weekend of, whatever, as far as like Friday through Saturday, into a little bit of Sunday before church. And so I get to, to class, as far as Tae Kwondo is concerned, after whatever, and I'm just like, Sensei Bob, with the way the sunlight is coming in, with the fluorescent lights, as far as that, I don't know what is whiter, your skin or your gi. And he was just, Susan, go run laps. What'd I say? What did I say? What'd I do? So I ran laps. Susan, I can't believe that you actually said that to me. And, so in the middle, he comes and, get over here. Okay, well, I can't believe you had the nerve to say that. Rah, 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 rah. And yet, in my defense, I was in the Bronx that weekend. So, I'm just saying, anybody who knows how the Bronx was in the 1990s, just saying, I mean, not all of the Bronx, but, I'm just saying, it was 1995, 1996, so people who had been in the Bronx maybe you could, you know, take a look at Sensei Bob and be like, well, yes. And I don't know what he did over the weekend either, which would be funny in certain references, but yeah, it's just one of those, yeah, well, you know, it was the truth though. It's kind of similar as far as like the scuba divers I knew, where it's like, yeah, well, you know, when your skin tone, when the sunlight hits your skin, it's like this. In comparison, and then you wear whatever bathing suits as you do. You know, I mean, at the very minimum, you know, as far as scuba toys, on the other hand, they all just look like bananas running around. Because of their yellow onesies, so they just look like, you know, bananas. In their onesies, so it was as it was. And so, whereas, you know, the international scuba divers, that depended on whatever they were. I got made fun of because of my black wetsuit bikini. So, which was weird because I realized that I was the only one who had a black wetsuit at the time. Everybody else's wetsuits were, you know, different colors. Which I didn't understand why they would do that, because it's one of those, you do understand if you go in the ocean, you look like a lord. Do you understand that? Okay, well, you know, if you want to go the ocean looking like a lord, have fun with that. I'm gonna be all ninja and stuff, and, you know, because there's gonna go diving, you know, especially the females. The females were, you know, wearing these bright colors and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna not do that. And there were a couple of females that were like, well, why not? Don't you want to look cool? And it's like, I want to live. Yeah. Yeah. You look like a parrotfish would look in regards to your, you know, whatever that you're wearing. You look like, you know, and I go down the list of some of the different species of fish, and I'm like, and you know what I can say about all of your little wetsuits? And their responses, male or female at that point, that we look good. And my response was, you look like dinner to their predators. That's what you look as. Yeah. Me, on the other hand, you make fun of my black wetsuit, that's fine. You know what I don't have to worry about? And their response was what? Having a predator. Yeah, I don't have to worry about having a predator after me. I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, I can camo. in comparison to you. Yeah. Yeah. So you take your little fins with whatever, you go right ahead and make some of them glitified. On top of that, they did glitter to their exterior of their snorkels. I was like, yeah, you seem stupid. They thought it would be cool because they could see a fish up close, and it's like, or you can respect the fact that you're in their ocean waters or lake waters, wherever you go, because some of those other, because, you know, kind of like in Lake Travis, there were these people that were like, yeah, all we gotta do is get a Vienna sausage can and open it in the water, and all these fish come in, you know, and I look at them and I was like, do you know what follows those little fish? That goes after those Vienna sausages? And the response was, no, what? Bigger fish. Yeah. traditional scuba diver, holding apparently a Vienna sausage can. And then here's some little fishies that show up with some bigger fishies, and some bigger fishies, and some bigger fishies, and some bigger fishies. And then a really big fish that could literally go and I was looked at weird for that. Seemed common sense-ish to me. But alright, that's fine. What do I know? Seemed pretty common sense-ish. It sure did. I don't know how that goes. So, you know, you got Cutie Patootie Nay Super Yogi and Cutie Patootie Marine, and maybe those two could be like, yes, if you wear brightly whatever combination of, you know what, I would guesstimate, you know what, so there's badass Nay Super Yogi, and then Cutie Patootie Nay Super Yogi, and all these, you know, type of guys. Maybe those guys could be like, you know what, when we go scuba diving, we do not bedazzle our snorkels or masks, because we don't want to deal with that additional stuff, because that seems dumb. And it was the females that were like, no, it's really cool because when we do this, the little fish come up and they're like whatever as far as their snorkel, and it's like, you know, that's just, you know, and I got made fun of for wanting to go ice diving during the Aurora Borealis. I'm just saying, I don't know about levels of maturity in that, like, I'm fairly certain going and bedazzling your little snorkel so that way you can, you know, I don't know how I got looked at weird for wanting to go ice scuba diving during the Aurora Borealis in Alaska. That seemed cool, pun intended. That seems like it'd be an awesome scuba dive. However, that bedazzling the scuba masks and that just seems, you know, that seems, you know, I mean, I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, and I went from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math. I don't know. I'm not the smartest crayon in the toolbox. Maybe it's my memory deficits. Maybe it's my cognitive disorders. I don't think it's my headaches or migraines. However, I'm fairly certain that doesn't seem like the smartest idea to be bedazzling the snorkel or the mask. It seems kind of, you know, intelligence. Well, I guess that's the Darwin effect. I think that's what that would be translated to in the water. You know, that's kind of that. So, you know. You know, and then it's the irony is they complained about how I physically look as far as my tattoos, and they tried to compare that it was, no, you can't compare that, because unlike in that capacity, you're doing that in that, and no, not the same, no, not at all, no, I understand, I'm not the only person who has tattoos, I don't know if you know that, and their response was, no, Susan, you are not, you're the only one who has tattoos. I don't believe you. And one of the females at Clear Springs or Huntsville, might have been whichever one, her response was, no. Nobody else has tattoos. Except, you know, in a few areas, I've seen these things called tattoo shops. I'm going to guesstimate there's probably more than one, probably because I'm not the only person who has tattoos. Or gets them. Or might get another one. They're going to know. nobody else who has tattoos at all. While she was standing next to a male who had tattoos. Alright, then that's fine. What do I know? No, that's fine. That's fine. That just is as it is, you know, so to each their own. But yeah, I just kind of figured it'd be interesting in regards of if Sensei Bob actually remembered. But yeah, I kind of figured it was kind of, in some ways, a bit ideal for timing as far as processing quite a few situations, especially with the time frame and all that. So, but yeah, his big thing was he couldn't understand how I'm just like, yes, let me go swimming, yay! But you know, I guess I had that same sort of response when it came to people in Texas. They didn't really understand how I could ever enjoy swimming, and it's like, I don't know how you can't. But then again, I saw what the area is. They go much deeper in the water than in New Jersey. Regarding that area of the Gulf of Mexico near Texas, they go much, but the water's also warmer, and the waves aren't nearly the same. It's a different color water too. But you know, that is what it is, you know, just, you know, as it is. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel, like my official YouTube video. Go and listen to my other, and watch my other YouTube videos officially and stuff. Like those, and if you're going to leave a comment, please make sure to have etiquette and respect, and go to my website, www.susanmilling.com. You guys have a good day. Today is the 6th of May, 2022.